I'm Lon. I'm the librarian here at the Bethesda Library, and today I'm going to read Hanukkah at Valley Forge by Stephen Krensky, illustrated by Greg Harlan. The general stood tall on the stony ridge at Valley Forge, surveying his troops. The December night was clear, but the wind cut cruelly through his heavy coat. The general shook his head, shrugging the cold aside. It was his men he was worried about. For more than 2 years, his army had been at war. The general had not expected the fighting to be easy. War was never easy. But some of the soldiers lacked weapons to defend themselves. Others were without coats or shoes, and nobody had enough to eat. An army of skeletons, one witness called them. The snow crunched dryly under the general's boots as he walked through the camp. In one crude hut, a young soldier was sitting at a small table. The general watched from the doorway in silence. The soldier was lighting a candle. The flame flickered for a moment and then grew steadily. All the while, the soldier was speaking softly, too softly for the general to catch his words. The general cleared his throat, and the soldier jumped up. "General Washington," he cried. His commander-in-chief nodded. "A cold night, is it not?" he said. The soldier swallowed nervously. "Truly it is, but no colder than my home back in Poland." He paused. "And there, not only is the weather cold, the laws are cold as well. If my family were to light a candle tonight, they would have to do it in secret. But that will not stop them, for this is the first night of Hanukkah." "Hanukkah," the general repeated. The word was unfamiliar to him. "The name for a celebration. I was just finishing a prayer in Hebrew, sir, in honor of what once happened." "Ah, then you are of the children of Abraham." The general's gaze was intent. "Tell me more of Hanukkah." The soldier stared at the candle for a moment, and then he began to speak. "Over 2,000 years ago," said the soldier, "my people, the people of Israel, were ruled by Antiochus, a Greek king from far away. He did not permit them to pray to their God and follow their customs. He wanted them to worship the Greek gods." General Washington nodded. The fight for liberty is an ancient one, and no one likes squirming under the thumb of a distant king. The soldier looked at his candles. "In my homeland, I could not follow my beliefs either. That's why I came to America." But the people of Israel were not so fortunate. In a village near Jerusalem, the soldiers ordered them to bow to the Greek idols and eat from a slaughtered pig. Both of these things were forbidden. In protest, Mattathias, the high priest, refused to obey, and when the ceremony continued without him, he angrily drew his sword. In the fight that followed, lives were lost, though Mattathias escaped. He and his 5 sons, the Maccabees, became the leaders of a rebellion. Some said they were foolish, risking their lives in a doomed cause, but the Maccabees fought on. Their force was small, but they did not give up. The general sighed. He too was mired in an uphill fight. Independence from England had been declared 18 months earlier, in July 1776. But declaring it had not ended the war. True, his forces had won some battles, but the British still controlled the major cities and much of the countryside. "I understand," he said. "We too have a cruel enemy who leaves us only with the choice of brave resistance or abject submission." "There was one battle," the soldier went on, "where the army of the Maccabees were greatly outnumbered. But Mattathias' son Judah rallied the troops. He reminded them that battles are not won or lost solely on the strength in the field. 'Our enemies are not invincible,' Judah told them, 'for they trust in arms and acts of daring, but we trust in the Almighty God.' Judah and his army won the fight, and many more followed. After 3 years, though, the Maccabees finally drove the enemies away. The Israelites rejoiced in their new freedom and set about cleaning their temple. They were eager to worship again in the ways of their forefathers. But when it came time to light the temple menorah, they could find only enough oil for 1 day. That was troubling. Once lit, the menorah was never supposed to go out. Still, they did not want to wait any longer, so they lighted the menorah and trusted that God would help them find more oil as quickly as possible. The search for oil was not easy. One day passed quickly, and none was found, yet the menorah remained lit. Another day went by, and still there was no oil, but the flames remained strong. 3 days, 4 days, the hunt continued. But all the fighting and destruction made finding things very difficult. In all, 8 days passed before any new oil arrived. And in all that time, the lights of the menorah never went out. The soldier blew on his hands to warm them. Truly a miracle happened there, so every year we remember this festival of lights. Tonight is the first night of Hanukkah, and therefore I lit only the first candle of the Hanukkah menorah, the Hanukkah. I will use this special candle, the shamash, to light one candle each night until there are 8. 8 candles to honor the 8 days the oil lasted. The general made ready to leave. Your tale is a brave one, and your candles have brightened my evening. Perhaps we are not as lost as our enemies would have us believe. I rejoice in the Maccabees' success, though it is long past. He smiled grimly, and it pleases me to think that miracles may still be possible. The soldier nodded. The world would be a poor place without them. So it would, said General Washington, with a lighter mood than he had felt in many a day, and he continued on his rounds. The wind quieted, and the Hanukkah candles burned long into the night. The story of George Washington and Hanukkah is based on facts, but the tale itself must be taken on faith. It is known that in December 1778, Washington had lunch at the home of Michael Hart, a Jewish merchant in Easton, Pennsylvania. In the middle of Hanukkah, when Hart began to explain the holiday to the general, Washington replied that he knew it already. He then told the merchant and his family of meeting a Polish soldier at Valley Forge the year before. It was Hart's stepdaughter Louisa who reportedly committed the story to her diary, which was later recounted in Rabbi I. Harold Schaffman's book, Jews on the Frontier. Since Washington himself kept no diary during the war years, he left no personal record of the event. Certainly, though, the story fits with the curiosity and reactions Washington displayed on later occasions. In that spirit, some of Washington's dialogue here has been borrowed from his own writings in the hope of echoing his real voice. And that was Hanukkah at Valley Forge by Stephen Kerensky with illustrations by Greg Harlan.